Today's an exciting day because I get to interview cute Mollie Openshaw. So I'm so glad that you're here. Thank you so much. This is something super exciting for me because we haven't known each other a super long time. We just met a couple months ago. Yep. And I just knew right when I met Mollie, I'm like, we're going to be good friends because she's so authentic, so down to earth, like the type of people that I want to gather. So I'm so excited that you're here. Thank you so much.
I'm excited to be here too. You're welcome.
So great. Kate, I first want to read Mollie's story because when she sent me her formal introduction, I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much to unpack here. And at first I was like, oh, I'm going to ask her to, give a 2 to 3 minute high level introduction to her. But she worded this so well. I'm just going to read it if that's okay. Then we'll get right into all the questions.
Okay.
Though she was determined to first travel the world, be in a band, and learn to Latin dance, Mollie decided, after asking God, that she'd keep that bucket list but jump into married life far earlier than she anticipated, getting engaged at just 19 years old in 2006. Basically, Ben was just too good to pass up, and I love Ben. He's such a rock star. Getting married came with relocating and leaving behind a job she loved. Though she was in school full-time, Mollie wanted to work as well. Her dad had always driven home the point of working for yourself with limitless potential versus trading hours for dollars. So with that in mind, and a little need to prove a point to Ben, he didn't think she could start a business out of thin air. She set off to register her first company. Her entrepreneurial journey began with a wedding invitation business, which soon grew to one of the top in the state, designing invitations for brides all across the country, even some overseas, and for local celebs like Rachel Parcell and Emily Jackson. Mollie ran that company for around 7 years, but kept feeling the pull toward home design as it was her original passion from about age 12 on. She designed and built her and Ben's first home in 2009, and soon after began taking on interior projects for friends and family. She had begun her degree at Utah State University, go Aggies, I'm an Aggie too, in interior design, but ended up graduating with an English degree. She learned building codes during the home building process and also picked up a lot from her contractor brother-in-law throughout the build. Her current home is the fourth one she designed for her family, builder brother-in-law Spencer of Clearstone Builders. By 2014, Mollie, now a mother of 2, and a friend had started Design Loves Detail as a blog to share different wedding and home design projects, which eventually became an interior design studio. In 2018, after client work became too much of a struggle with young kids, their 3rd and 4th had joined the family. Due to the commute/time away and scaling challenges, Mollie decided to dive into affiliate marketing as a way to take her skill set to a broader online audience. She helped pioneer the daily deals concept in the interior design influencer space, sharing the best affordable home finds in her Instagram stories with affiliate links. She quickly mastered utilizing both pay-per-click links and CPA models, driving millions in annual revenue for many well-known retailers. As brands began reaching out for partnerships, Ben and Mollie recognized the income potential for the business. In March 2020, which is a crazy time, Ben left his position running sales for a tech company to join the team. His work in the sales field was perfect for negotiating contracts and growing partnerships. In 2021, with less than 150,000 followers, Mollie achieved her first 7-figure year, all while working from home as a busy mom of 4. Today, the business continues to grow, and Mollie is now working on releasing a course to teach others how to build their own social media business from home, doing what they love, and harnessing the power of affiliate marketing. So, everyone meet Mollie Openshaw. I'm so excited that you're here.
Thank you so much.
When I read this, I was like, oh my gosh, I have so many questions, so many things to unpack. So I love that. So I just want to start out by just asking about your relationship with you and Ben, how that, started and you've changed and grown together, how it's become what it is today, because I look at you guys together and I'm like, you are such good supporters for each other. So first, tell us all about that.
Yeah, and I have a lot of thoughts on relationships, right? We were so young. He was, when we actually got married, I was barely 20 by 2 weeks because I didn't want to be a teen wedding. So I literally scheduled it exactly 2 weeks after my birthday. We're doing this. Yes. So July is my celebration month. But and it was like one of those things where it was scary to get married young. And I would literally talk people out of it. I actually feel bad about that now because I was like, I'm going to get married when I'm 28. I'll have done these things on my bucket list and it'll be great. But like, that wasn't the same plan that God had for me. And I had to like align my will. But I'm so glad I did because it was like, I had a total experience around if I should marry him. And when I finally asked, like I didn't even want to ask the question. And before Ben, like I almost got married twice, which is really weird.
Yes.
But then, well, the first one I don't think was that close, but the second one was kind of close. But I finally actually asked the question with Ben, and I had this whole like it was like I was in the shower, it was a shower vision.
I love that.
And anyway, I saw like my whole life, all these things I wanted to do because I was really focused on it, and I'm like a goals girl, and so like of course I'm gonna like have somewhere I'm aiming. Yes. And when I don't want to veer from that. So I pictured all of these things on my list. But what was weird was that in my mind, they were kind of in black and white. And I realized like Ben was the color in my life, which is funny because I heard a song this morning, like I'd never heard it before. And it was talking about that. I'll have to find the name of it. But it was like about like how a person can become the color in your life. And even though you have all these things you want, like he kind of like was what was making, my life colorful, and I realized I can still do all these things with him.
Yes, I love that. So, and then a partnership. When I've heard him talk about you, he feels the same way. Like he's like, she's so fun and she's the best, and he always like talks you up to like, which is really who you are. And like, I feel the same way about Mollie. I think you're the best. So.
I will say, we haven't always been the best at being each other's supporter because we have talked about too how there's times that we're in competition. And so it sounds weird, but we've had to really like become better at being cheerleaders.
Being on the same team.
Yeah, we are the same team.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. That's super cool. So tell me about some of these things that you're like, when I was a little kid, I was going to do this. I was going to do this. I was going to do this. Cause it sounds like you switched to English and, you know, to kind of appease your dad or, you know, these things that are like normal growing up situations. Tell us about that.
Totally. My dad was always really big into, you know, entrepreneurial things. And he owned a landscape company. And so I'd work for him in the summer. It was that. Yeah, struggles a lot of years, but like I ran away once. But
oh my gosh, I need to hear that story.
I was walking home. It was like from like South Ogden to Layton. Like,
oh my gosh,
it's not normal.
That's a lot.
My mom eventually came and picked me up halfway home. But me and my dad, you know, we'd hit heads and stuff. But also he is a big driving factor, and I kind of see Ben that way. Like, it's like the people that really push you in life, you know, like that's great. But sometimes it's also hard. It's kind of the greatest reward and the greatest struggle too. So anyway, with my dad, back on track, he was always a big influence in my life, and he taught me a lot about being, you know, how important it was to be an entrepreneur. And so I wasn't afraid of it. Like I thought that was goals, like to become, you know, that. And then my other things were just random, like wanting to be in a band, and like living a full life is just so important to me, an exciting life, never to be boring. And so I think that kind of factored into that. And then of course but I loved interior design from age 12. I wanted to be a marine biologist all my childhood. I still love dolphins. But then at 12, I like really felt the pull to like do interior stuff, and my parents would let me paint on the walls. Oh my gosh, like crazy stuff. Like, amazing. So thank you, Mom and Dad. Thank you. Because I think I really got a taste for the creativity, like, and you learn to like make mistakes early so that it's not like a bad thing.
Totally. Like the testing and the trying and the failure, right?
Yeah, totally. And at the time, like in college, so I just heavily weighed my dad's opinions. And so when I was in college, he was like, are you sure you want to do interior design? Because he's like, you're going to have to move to like a metropolitan area. Because back then there wasn't Pinterest. It wasn't like the same landscape for interior design. So I knew what he was saying, you know, in retrospect. Back then I was kind of like, yeah, maybe English would be more practical. Like I could use that in a lot of applications. And I don't regret the switch, but it is kind of funny now looking back. Because like my whole business is around what I had originally.
Well, and I love that part. Like that's why I'm doing this podcast, is the whole story. Like I think oftentimes we think, oh, they just like, it was perfect. She wanted to do this since she was 12, and then she went and did it, and it happened overnight. And it's like, no, that's not at all what happened, because we're all taking these different routes and these different roads. And then you're like, oh, this is it. And maybe this isn't it forever either, whatever stage we're in. And so I think that's really relatable to a lot of people to be like, oh yeah, I thought I should do business because it was smart, and now you're like doing this amazing thing that you're doing now. And
it's true.
Cool.
It's true. And like, I didn't put like all the low points, right? Like and that's the thing, people read your highlights. But there were failed things like all throughout that. Like I did a random boutique, like an online boutique, and it was like such a fail. And I was just like, this isn't my calling, you know what I mean? That was like between invitations and Design Loves Detail. So anyway, there was lots of failures and things that you learn from.
Yes. So let's lean into that for a minute. Yeah. What would you say was one of those like big, it could either be with this specific boutique or something else that you're like, wow, that was a big flop, that maybe because it was a flop and a failure, right? The learning happened that you're like, oh, this is why I made a big pivot.
Yeah, I would say even with my invitation company. So I worked for a yearbook company doing design. So I had acquired that skill of like basically graphic. I was like, what's it?
So you're like design. Something design. Yeah, totally.
So graphic design was familiar to me. And so I was like, what if I designed my wedding invitations to save money, because like I had a tight wedding budget. And so
19 and
And so I honestly feel like a lot of times your callings will find you if you're willing to just kind of take the risk. And so I did our wedding invitations, and tons of people asked about them, and I'm like, I could totally do this as a business.
Yeah, I'm like, sure.
I had a very little other than that experience with doing yearbook stuff, I had very little. I had no business. I was 19, 20, when I did the invitation. So anyway, long story short, there were, even though that business became a thing and it did well and stuff, I should have scaled that, and I should have sold that. Like there's things now that I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, and I didn't. So there's always like things where I could have improved,
like the learning that happens.
And so I learned from that, but I'm still learning. Like there's a lot of things that I still feel like I'm a complete failure at. I mean, we should make another word, right? Like I'm just learning. I'm just a learning person.
Yes. Okay, one thing that I love about you is I feel like the way your brain thinks is you're so creative, but then you also have like the business side of it too. And I think that's really important to recognize, because a lot of people will be like, oh, it's just based on your talent or your creativity.
Yeah.
And yes, you have to have a good product essentially to sell. But like, I love the way your brain thinks, because you stepped into something that now we're all very familiar with, affiliate marketing, and we see that all the time. But when you started that, it wasn't the common thing to do. So what business fireworks were going off in your brain that you were like, oh, I'm going to lean into this?
That's a good question. I think, and I feel a little bit bad saying this, but I have been driven to create companies largely to because I'm stubborn, and it's been to prove a point. I said that in there. That is that's 100% real. So a couple different things. It's either, and usually it's both. It's actually usually somebody pushing me, but also I have also really leaned heavily into my spiritual direction from God. And so I would say it was a combination of those things. In fact, when I had sort of taken some years in there between wedding invitations and I did Design Loves Detail as a hobby, sharing just friend and family stuff. But I got to this point where my dad was needing to retire, and I wasn't sure, and he ended up being okay, but I'll sometimes worry about something and need a solution, and I wanted to help because he needed double knee replacement and actually open heart surgery as well. Because he just did manual labor for so long. And that's why my dad's my hero, because I've never seen anyone work harder. And so I would pray at night, that God would send me something to solve this problem. Yeah, because I was just I need to be ready to help him if he needs it, because he needs to retire.
My goodness.
And my dad's tough. I shouldn't have been so worried, but you just kind of do.
It's still your parents. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I mean, he was like 72, I think, when he like retired. So like he had worked like hard for so long. And so it was that. And then also, I was, again, proving something to Ben. I love it. And so I had
Fuel
kind
the
of
fire,
this,
yeah.
So I do really feel like I had some direction and assistance from God. We're always better. You know, we're always more.
Totally.
And so that kind of led me to a platform that I found that did pay per click. I had my company going. I hadn't really seen the true fruits of affiliate marketing.
Totally.
Like it was just kind of casual.
It was just kind of dabbling. Yeah.
Yeah. And I do attribute a lot. I do have that business mind where I've always loved to make money. And my daughter's the same way. Like one day she saw a box of, I'm just throwing random stories out, but she saw a box of free squash. She was 5. It said like free, someone put outside. Yeah. And she loaded them in her wagon and went around the neighborhood selling them. And she came home with like over $20. And me and Ben were like,
Stop. And she's 5.
Yes, I'm not kidding. We were like, where did you get this money? She's like, I sold the squash. They were free. And so anyway.
Oh my gosh, I love her.
Yeah, so I was the exact same way as a kid. Like kind of just like I loved to like
motivated by that.
Yeah, it was fun to make money. And so I do have that side of me, but I will say a lot of the numbers and the like more left brain, right brain's creative, left brain stuff is Ben. So the fact that we're exact opposites is part of why
such a
So he starts to do the numbers as I'm like picking up, you know, I'm like I'm just driving forward.
Like,
I'm
we
not
can
even
make
looking.
money this way and I'm gonna do that. You figure out like what that looks like.
Totally. Money's coming in and he's like, well, wait, Molly, if you exponentially do this, I know that, you know, then you realize.
And,
I hate spreadsheets.
I love spreadsheets.
You do? Okay, see, we need you in the world. And the ones that are fighting the spreadsheets.
Yes,
we also need them.
I love that.
Anyways, so I would say that is true. I definitely have a love for that process, but a lot of the numbers and that comes from Ben. So you can get
well, and I love that you guys were both like, oh, we're going to take this leap that is like it almost sounds too good to be true. Like now again, we know what affiliate marketing looks like and we're comfortable with that, but I'm just so impressed that you're like, no, we're gonna try it out and we're gonna make it happen. And it's super cool.
It was nice too. I will say it was nice for me because I had the comfort of him having a good job and a good income. And so I was in a good place to be able to just kind of like have fun with it.
Test things. Yeah, totally.
And so then when it started like really coming in and like, he's like, okay, like we need to look at this.
Okay. So I can totally relate to being stubborn and being like, well, watch me. You know what I mean? If you say I can't do it, like watch me kind of thing. So it sounds like you've had that with Ben throughout throughout your journey. But then he quit his job full time March 2020. Yeah. Tell me like what the emotions were happening, because were you more like, see, I proved it and I'm so excited? Or were you more like, I need help? Or were you like something totally different?
Honestly, we were in a really good place in our marriage. In fact, probably one of my favorite places. And you have to, it's been a hard lesson for me to learn that marriage, just like life, is hills and valleys. Because to me, it was like, we are just on this upward trajectory. We're way better now than we were here. But then it's like, oh no, like, just wait. Like, it's like this.
It's still.
Yeah. And that's okay. But it was hard for me to learn that. And I still miss that actually the place that we were right before we started working together.
No kidding.
So like, I don't recommend people work together.
Yes. Okay. I love this. We need to hear it all. Yes.
If I could go back, I would have tried to find another way.
Really?
It's been that hard on the marriage.
Really? Oh, that's so hard.
But at the time, we were super optimistic. It was fun. I remember him coming home from work and he would be like, Molly, look what you did today. And he'd show me the numbers. And he was just like my biggest fan.
Yes.
So it took this dynamic of just celebrating me. And I love, I love that. I love being praised, right? Do we not all? And then it put him in a role of unintentionally kind of being almost like my boss. Neither of us really intended that, but it's sort of, and so it's like I literally built a world because I love for no one to control me, but I also don't want to control anyone.
Yes. Oh, interesting. Yes.
It's a weird, so that's kind of a weird thing.
Yes.
And then I have someone that I have to answer to. And so it took some of the fun out of it. And of course, I was doing it a little bit less for the passion now, because now it's also, this is the sole income for both of us. Like we're all in.
Yes.
And it was that crazy time, March 2020, when we were supposed to, everyone's like staying home and it's all that stuff.
Totally.
And so we were like, what have we done? What have we done? And people were scared, so they weren't spending online for a time.
Totally.
But then
everyone was home and they're like, that's all I can do.
I can't stare at these walls anymore. I'm going to update. So
that was really good timing.
So that was so then it blew up. People were coming to me for all the recommendations, and and you know what was crazy too, one way that I really ended up connecting with my audience that year was people were kind of like, why are you still posting about home stuff? Like there was a few people, because you always have haters.
Yeah.
Always have them.
Yes.
But someone was like, you should be teaching like sustaining gardens and things like that. I'm like, that isn't my expertise.
That's not what you do. Yeah, totally.
Just like people came with all kinds of stuff. So one day I just get on there and I look, it's funny because I like looked back and seen that video and I looked such a mess. Like it was so raw, Andrea.
Yes.
I just turned on my phone and I was like, this is really hard. I just told him everything. I'm like, Ben quit his job. We are all in on this. This is our family's income. I love this. This is what I'm passionate about. And I love sharing it with you. And I think most of you are happy, you know, to come here and like still be like seeing home stuff despite like the craziness that's happening.
Yes.
And so I'm going to keep doing that, but it's really hard. And I was crying because I'm like, this is scary.
This is real. Yeah.
And I have never had more support in my whole life. Like the way that people showed up for me, like still gives me chills. Like just my DMs were just flooded, and my followers are so many women, right? Like women can really come together, but you have to be open. You have to share your struggle and be vulnerable so that they can.
Yes.
And so it was this magic that they came and just lifted me up, and we're like, we're here. Like we love you being here, and this gives us like a place to escape. And sometimes you need that. Like we're not running from the problem, but we need like an outlet. And our homes are so central to like life and the core and the family and togetherness. Like it's sacred. Yes. And so I love
creating a space and a platform for your family too. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's special. And so anyway, that was like a huge blessing. And I can't remember the question, but that's where we
I love that.
landed.
Just the 2020. I mean,
oh yeah.
It's easy to be like, wow, that's like such a crazy time and hard and all the things. But like, I love that that's kind of how life is. The more extreme this way you go, the more joy you can feel on this end. And it sounds like you really experienced that from your audience in your community. You know, it probably felt a lot more like a community than just like, oh, I'm talking to my screen. It was like, oh, real people like care about this.
Totally.
And care about me.
Exactly
and
right.
It's crazy how many haters are so loud. Mm-hmm. And then you're like, oh no, there's a lot of people sending love and appreciating. And we just don't always
hear
quieter,
it. Right? Sometimes the best things are.
Totally. So kind of on the same note of like 2020, you've kind of like at that time started like homeschooling and stuff like that. Yeah. And you said you've kind of gone back and forth different times of life. And I love what you said earlier where you're like, I want life to be fun and adventurous. So how does your lifestyle now reflect all of those things? Like your choices with homeschooling or not, or this and that, or traveling or.
Yeah, I think that there comes a point where you have to like give yourself permission to do things differently. And my dad, again, like I reference my dad so much because he was just he is alive. He is such an influence. But I mean, like when I look back, I can see all the places where he set this example for me of being good to be different. He's like the way he dresses. He always wears like a pop collar.
I love that.
And it has his own style. And it was always a good thing to be who you are and to be different.
Yes.
And so I think that like with life, that's maybe been a little harder for Ben. He's a little more traditional. So kind of breaking away from like, hey, this is how, he wants like the structure.
It's been done before.
Yeah. And I'm like, well, hey, what if we go live in French Polynesia for a couple months? And he's like, okay.
He like gets it.
Like he's looking at airfare,
Yes.
And that's giving our kids like an interesting life.
Totally. Oh my gosh.
So I love that. And they're exciting and fun and they love it. And I don't know. So that's a blessing. And that's something that is freedom that comes from having built a company that's flexible and that we make the rules. So you kind of extend that to these other parts of your life, because why do we settle? Or did we get hurt? Did we feel failure? But we go with plan B, C, D, E, F, like why not plan A? Or if, you know, maybe you pivot, but it's like, go for the biggest dream, all in. Right? Live big.
Yes. Great plug. Thank you.
But that's the same thing. Like I'm on that track too. It's like, who says
totally
we can't?
Yes. And then it's funny how there's those of us that are like, and maybe we were talking earlier, like that we're both oldest children, but there's just like something about like the fire of when someone tells you can't, or like
totally
it should be this way or shouldn't be this way. Like, let's just challenge like why we think we should do things a certain way, because the more finance books I read and the more like money mindset books I read or whatever, I realize like how I was raised with money, for example. I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's everything opposite that I've ever learned, you know? And I think the more mindset stuff in general, or just other things that I learn, I'm like, oh, if the majority is going this way, I actually want to go that way.
Totally.
You know?
Swim upstream.
Yeah. Because it's like, most people aren't happy. Most people aren't, you know, and we all want that. And it's like, why are we all doing the same things as everyone else? Instead of like, what's our intuition and what do we really want? That's what actually makes you happy, you know? So I'm seeing that in you in a lot of ways. It's super cool. Away from. I love that. Okay, I wrote down some questions that I'm like, okay, do not want to forget to ask her this. Okay. Can you share a personal story of how you've made a personal sacrifice or business sacrifice that either really did pay off or really didn't pay off?
That one is, I was thinking about that question and I was like, I almost don't even have an exact one I could like dial in on. However, I do think like when I look back, it's like my greatest strength and my greatest weakness that I get so focused on something. Like ADHD girl. Yes. I don't know why I said that was
like your best. Yeah. That fits describing that. Yeah.
Which is funny because I denied that for so long. Like my teacher first said that, Mrs. Al, and
thank you so much.
Thank you didn't know how to approach at my teacher parent conference. She's like, so I think Mollie, and I was like, I'm writing poetry during your class because like I can't follow what you're saying. But it was funny because I totally was. I just didn't realize it. And which is like, you can turn anything into your strength, right?
Totally, yes.
And I think that that's why I get dialed in. But I also think that I can lose track of what really is most important. And I think I actually did that. I just got to a place where I was working so much that I just wasn't seeing the kids. And sometimes I'm still in that. And it's like a constant battle.
Yes.
I mean, I'm home, right? But I'm not like present. So like, that's what I'm working on now, is like just to be really present, like to walk away. Like, cause I've heard someone say, instead of saying in a minute, when your kids ask you, say for a minute. And so just get up and do the thing, right? Like my son was writing words in pretzels and he's like, can I show you something? And I'm like, yeah, show me. You know, it was right. I was 5 minutes late today, but like,
no,
but you know what I mean? Yes. It's worth it.
Yes.
And so I think as you go through building something, whether it's yours or with your spouse, like really be asking the question, at what cost? Because you can really do anything. And I believe that. I believe people can do anything.
Yes.
But sometimes in the process, you actually trade the best things for what you think you want.
Totally.
And then you get there and you're like, wait. Yeah.
Is this for real? Is this actually what I want? Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like how you have your 4 pillars, right? Like it's not just wealth and success. There's emotional, right? What are they?
Yeah. Well, health, relationship, time, and finances.
Yes.
But yes, I know what you're talking about. Like emotional, physical.
Yes. All those pieces
mental.
too.
Yeah.
Totally. And so anyway, it's like that. I think that it's just finding and balance. I think balance is one of those words that we try to throw out there too casually.
Yes.
I don't know that there ever is. Like you're very rarely gonna feel like, oh wow, I really had that right. Yeah. It's just a constant working to feel at peace, I think, with where you are and your priorities are aligned how you want them to be. Yeah. And you're fighting for it all the time because this course that I'm working on, there's been so many obstacles that have been thrown in the path, and it makes me think, okay, like just actually, I need to do this. Yes. Like I think this is going to change people's lives, but it's sometimes like so hard. Like we're fighting a lot of things to get to the best things.
So a follow-up question to that would be, how do you personally find when to kind of push and when to kind of pull back with personal, business, relationships, all of that stuff?
Yeah.
What's kind of your, like, I don't know, adjustment?
Measuring stick or something
exactly.
for that?
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I think it's, how do you feel when you wake up? You know, are you excited or are you like, no?
Yes, I love that question. Yeah.
You know, it's like, that for me tells me where I'm at in life. And so if I get to the place where I'm like kind of dreading, like, I mean, regularly, there's some days that are just, you know, you have a lot going on. You're like, oh, I got to get through this day. But like, if you're consistently feeling that, like, that's not your best life. You know, you might have all the things in the world. In fact, the hardest thing about success is actually getting there and realizing maybe that wasn't the thing. Like, that's the crazy part.
Yeah.
Because I remember hitting these milestones sometimes, and you realize that it was actually like the journey that was the beauty.
But you were wishing for the end.
You always think you're going to be somewhere else. So you have
line.
to be present. You have to like live and find joy in that moment. Or because I had this boyfriend and his mom would say this. If you're not living here and now, you're not living anywhere. And I was like, yeah, that's true, because that's the only option you have, right? Like that, where you can actually be present. And so I think about that sometimes. Just am I in the moment, or am I like 12 steps ahead? Because that's not living.
Totally.
So that's the hardest.
Are you alive or are you living?
Yeah, totally. So that's probably the thing that I measure my success by, because success isn't really, I thought it was money.
Yeah.
You know, I thought it was,
because it's easy to quantify, like, oh, I hit here or here or whatever, but that's not actually success. Yeah. I love that. So do you think I'm almost picturing like what you're saying is like, does it feel like that Christmas night before Christmas feeling where you're like, oh, I'm so excited for tomorrow versus, I mean, not that you're always waiting for tomorrow, but like,
I know what you mean.
You know, that like, but if we could bottle that of just being like, oh, I'm excited for, like last night, I'm like, oh, I'm so excited to interview Mollie. Like,
I love
that's fulfilling.
You're doing what you
know?
love.
Yeah, totally. But then I'm also like, oh, I'm so excited to see my girls when they wake up in the morning or whatever, you know, and like be in a state of, excitement for your life. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So with that being said, do you feel like I guess what I want to ask more specifically is like, what does success mean for you? What does that look like?
I mean, I think that I just think about when I get to the end of my life, right? I'm not going to care about my like beautiful house.
Yes.
But I will want my kids to be happy and thriving, and I'll want to have done. We're very big on like independence and, you know, them and teaching our kids to succeed on their own. Like our 6-year-old does his own laundry. That's my husband's doing.
I love
the cutest thing you've ever seen.
Yes.
And so like I didn't do my own laundry growing up, but but I love that like my husband did, and so we kind of bring those values in. And so there's this level of, not did I do everything for my kids, but did I teach them well, and are they happy? Do they love themselves? You know, those are the things I want to give them. Those are the things I want to model for them.
I love that.
And that would be success. If I can get to the end of my life and be proud of those efforts and my marriage, right? Like it's so much work sometimes, but like if you get to the end and you did that, like that is,
that's success. Yeah. Cause those are the things you're making me tear up. Those are the things that, you take with you. Yeah. And those are the successes. It's cool because I think just thinking about that's your version of success. And I think everyone has to like kind of think and sit with that for a second. There's this book that's called Success Is, and it's like one of those 80s books that sat on like my parents' shelf. And I read it one time. It's really thin. I read it and it was talking about Christ. Like success is, he didn't have all the things. And it goes through like, he didn't have worldly fame. He didn't have you know, these nice things or a successful career or all these accolades or all these things. But like it was about the relationships, you know, of like who he went around and spread goodness to. And I think that's what you're saying, where like your most important relationships are your kids and your husband. And it's like, if you spend the effort to create those valuable relationships, that's going to be success at the end of your life.
Totally.
And so I think that's cool to like think about. And then it's almost like bringing it back to what you were saying, where like at the end of the day or maybe the next morning, it's like, am I having success? And it's, if you're quantifying and qualifying what success means for you, then you're like, oh, did I improve those relationships? Okay, well, then no matter what's going on in my business or friendships or hardships or whatever is going on over here, it doesn't matter as much, because you're like, oh, my priorities were in order.
Right,
you know?
right. And I think it's making sure that the tools, which is the business and this any success that you have, that's really just to give you the freedom, the money, and the time to create what really matttters. So if you let that become the focus, which I have so many times, Andrea, like I'm saying this because I've
learned it.
I'm in it, and I'm in a cycle of it all the time, like, because like I said, it's when you get focused on achieving something, it can easily become the
main
goal.
focus.
And it's not, that isn't it. It's like, we have this to fuel what we really want.
Totally.
So.
And that's so relatable, because I think whether you're like whatever career or business or whatever you're involved in or not involved in, it's like we all have a version of that, of the cycle of like, oh, I gotta be in check again. Dang it, I don't have this figured out again. And it's true. Like, it's just part of, figuring out. But it's interesting to think of like your kids are all changing ages and interests, and your husband's changing and has different interests, and your business is changing. It's like, it makes sense that we'd have to like reevaluate and what's the word I'm looking for? Realign. Yes. Over and over and over again. Dang it, Yeah. But like, it almost like gives you a break to be like, oh, give yourself some grace. Like, it's true. So many things are changing. It's okay, And so I love that you called it a cycle, because then it doesn't make it seem like it has to be on this trajectory. It's like, nope, the hills and valleys of all of that.
Everything is
real life. Yeah, for sure. No, I love that. Okay, there was another one that I'm like, oh, I have to ask her. Oh, I know. So tell us what a day in the life of the Openshaws look like.
Yeah. So let's see. Ben wakes up super early, and this is what I admire about him. He'll wake up at 5 a.m. and he just works out every single day. Like and the things that he does are like mind blowing to me, because I have all this creative energy, but it's like, I like to wake up and almost not know what I'm going to do that day. Like, I love the like uncertainty.
Like, it doesn't have to be so structured. Yeah.
Which has been one of our great struggles, because like I was saying, he loves the structure. So it's kind of finding a balance. But he gets up and gets working. I usually wake up at like 7. Kids wake up at 7. We have to do those alarm clocks that turn green, because our kids are like early risers.
We have one of those too. Yes.
Like, you can't come out till it's green.
Yes.
So we'd have like 5 or 6 a.m. for a while. And so anyways, like, we get the day going. We drink green smoothies every day.
I love that.
All the quirky things. My husband makes the green smoothie. See, Ben like makes everything work. Like, I'm not very functional. Like,
no, you.
I love that you're like, you have that business side. I'm like, yeah, I do.
No, you totally do.
I don't. Yes. I really struggle with monotonous tasks and repetitive things. Yes. It's one of my greatest, because to me, it's right, living this full life. Those are like, oh, so redundant and never done.
Why am I doing that?
The dishes are never done.
Yes.
And so anyway, but he makes it so that I can live more the way I want to, because he's willing to do those things. And I think when you look at, like, our families were very different. And so you can kind of trace it back to how we were raised. Yeah. But so he does the green smoothies. We'll have those.
I love that.
And then, like, I mean, it's funny, because when I look at my day, I'm like, I'm like living the life.
You're like, I have the dream life.
The kids do. I mean, it's a lot of work. But
totally.
The kids do homeschool starting at 9. They kind of are mostly self-directed, and will kind of dip in.
Guide
like,
them as needed.
Yeah, and really Ben does a lot of that. There's been times where I've handled that, but right now he's doing it. And like I said, we did private school, like at a small little school when we lived in Southern Utah. So anyway, like you're just constantly kind of adapting. And our kids are like, bless their hearts, like they're really good at, you know, the fact that we have a lot of changes and stuff.
Yes.
We try to, you know, like our family's pretty consistent in a lot of ways, but, and when I look back, I'm like, we have moved a lot and things like that. And
Yes.
they're amazing. But, anyways, so we do the homeschool and it's quick. Like, I mean, they can get through their lessons and kind of on their own, at their own pace.
Yes.
They're all kind of on their own thing. But, it's amazing how much time you have that you don't with the 6 hours.
Yes.
8, how long is school?
I know. I'm like,
Trying
I don't know. Yes, totally.
And so you just have a lot of time together. We always try to get them to play outside. They definitely they watch cooking shows too right now. Like they're in.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Yes.
It's not like they don't like do regular. Like they play video games and stuff.
Totally.
I never could play video games as a kid.
Oh, so you're like, you can do it. It'll be fine.
We give but you know, but I also love them to get outside, and they do. Like Flynn built a fort. Like all of these traditional things that I love for them to be creative and have
90s kids stuff.
90s
Yeah.
kids. We had it so good.
Yes.
So good.
Yes.
So anyway, yeah, like then, I mean, it's flexible. I always go outside and I try to get the morning sun.
Right?
Yes.
Yes.
I can't remember who that even comes from. It's just get like
no, yeah,
little sun in your eyes
yes.
and stuff. Anyway,
yes.
I do that. And then, I mean, it's a lot of work from that point. Like I just kind of fit it in where I can. But it's very, and Ben and
flexible.
I will we'll have phone calls and meetings throughout the day, and we just kind of fit them in where we can.
I love that.
And then like in the evening, we'll usually go on a walk or play pickleball. Like, I
I
don't know,
love
like,
that.
it sounds like I did nothing, but we work a lot in those gaps.
Know. I
wake up in the middle of the night and
Yes.
work. Sometimes Ben and I only sleep like 5 hours a night.
Oh
So
my
there's
goodness.
definitely so much to get done.
And sacrifices.
But but you can fit it where you want to.
Totally.
So.
Which is so nice about that flexible schedule. So obviously you're putting out content all the time for your business. Do you kind of have a structure for that or a system of like bust it all out at once, or do you kind of do it throughout the days, or is it a total mix? Or
sometimes when I like get to the technicality, like I am not, like I said, I'm not good at systems. Like we have tried, like I've had so many employees, we've tried so many structures. It largely comes down to like, Ben will put it in my calendar and he's like, and he'll have to remind me. This is why we have to try and like, we've been trying to separate it out. Cause he's like, I'm like the only one that dares tell you like, Mollie, this is due.
This is due. Yeah, everyone's
like,
scared to be like,
because I
Mollie.
procrastinated, whatever. But, so yeah, usually with content, I just have it in the calendar and I make it like
I'm doing it.
I'm very fly by the seat of my pants. So like we try to film in advance. Like we have YouTube, we have photo shoots all the time. That's very common to have like a photographer at the house. We're trying to like style stuff. So I don't have a great system. Like I'll admit, like I don't like the fact that
is your system. Yeah, totally.
We've even made what we have given the way I function is actually crazy.
No, I love that.
but Ben's been adapting and he handles a lot of the partnerships with brands.
Cool.
So like, so it's great because that's structure and that's order and we always, I get it done. It's not like I don't get it done, but a lot of times it's like, I'm sliding in at the last minute.
Yes. You're probably very efficient, right? Because you're like, I have a deadline and I procrastinate and I make it happen.
And I usually do my best work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because it's like under pressure and I can totally relate to that.
Yeah.
So another question I wanted to ask you is, you probably run into people all the time that are like, oh, Mollie, I follow you or whatever.
Yeah.
What is like the most common question that you get from people? Would you say?
Let me think. Yeah, it's funny because like people will be so excited to tell you they follow you, and then like they don't really have anything to say other than they're just like,
"Hi, I just want you to know there's a follow."
You're
one of those people.
Yeah, we were at the pumpkin place the other day.
Oh yeah,
and this girl's like, "Oh, we're in the bunny house."
I love that.
She's like, "Oh, I follow you on Instagram," and I'm like, "Oh, cool." And then she's just kind of like standing there. I'm like, "So, where do you live?"
Yeah, you're like, "Am I supposed to carry this conversation because you started it?" But hey,
and it's weird because like sometimes people will be. I don't know that it was the case with her, but like sometimes people will be kind of like, almost like starstruck. Like people take pictures with me and I'm like, it's so weird because I'm like, I'm not that famous. In fact, Ben, the kids will ask like, is mom famous? And Ben's like 1%. I think he bumped up to 2.
Oh my gosh.
So the kids, it's always like a family joke that mom's 1%.
1% famous.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I love that. No, that's so cute.
But I'm trying to think of the top question. Usually they'll just be like, I just bought this from you. Like they're excited about
they're
something.
Excited to be like, I'm stoked about this.
Bought from like deals I had shared. So yeah.
Well, honestly, like when I follow, similar accounts to yours as well, it's like, it's such a help to me, and so you're literally you're serving so many people who are trying to beautify their home and make their home feel the haven that they want to. And like, that's pretty cool to picture that, like, you have an influence literally like on all these homes all across, wherever. It's pretty cool to think of. It's fun to see.
Yeah, it's really cool. And people sometimes send me pictures like, you put this whole room together for me.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
That is so
cool. And there'll be people that have like really touching stories, people who like lost their home in a fire and had to rebuild.
Oh my gosh.
And it like helped them so much.
And they could probably just be so efficient by like.
When you're kind of mentally, and so like, that's the stuff that like, that drives
fuels
me too.
You.
Totally fuel.
Totally.
Because you see that your impact really does make a difference in someone's life.
Yes.
And it can become about numbers. That's another thing why you don't want to become about numbers because it's really about serving people. How can I best serve people?
That's what I love about you, Mollie. I think that is like you in a nutshell, wanting to serve others. Yes.
Thank you so much.
And that probably does push things forward so much to be like, no, I am serving and this is my focus instead of getting into the weeds of spreadsheets or whatever.
Yeah. That's been like a struggle for sure.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah.
No, I could totally see that. Yeah, I think that's really cool. Okay, I heard you speak one time and I wanted to have you share this story because it impacted me so deeply. But like, I love you shared about, I can't remember her name, but it was like a homeless girl that you helped. And like, to me, that is like what I know about you as a friend. That is like totally you in a nutshell and so I just want to like, do you know what story I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. Will you share that?
It's only been a recent thing, like, because I think that for a time, if I'm being really honest, like it was like this problem that felt so huge. I didn't know how to fix it. And, I wanted to help, but it's almost like, it's kind of intimidating too, because you almost have to put yourself out there.
Yeah.
But I literally had prayed that morning. And so God put Sylvia in my path that day.
Sylvia, that's her name. Yes. Yeah.
And it's like, it made me realize too that day how much we all can be down on our luck. Mm-hmm. Like we can all be in a position where we just need somebody. And so that day, luckily, I was able to be that for her. I was running errands, and I had just prayed to have purpose and everything that morning, which was kind of funny that I did it on a really busy day. But I think I just felt the emptiness, right? It's like when you wake up and you feel it's probably
the
that
checklist.
I probably
ongoing.
felt that, I felt like I'm not like things aren't aligned, things aren't right, and so. Luckily, God gave me this really special opportunity where I was carrying a sink into my countertop fabricator and I heard someone say to me, "Are you busy?" Which was so interesting to me that she started with that question because my answer to that is always yes. And this is something I'm trying to change about me because I have been so busy and so focused that I haven't prioritized the relationships, not just with my family, but with other people. And so luckily this was just a moment of clarity and I knew to answer no, right? Because nothing I was doing that day was more important than what Sylvia needed. And she had just asked me to take her to the shelter. And I was like, I can do that. I agree. And then of course, once we were driving and I'm talking to her, I thought, well, we should get some food. And then after that, as I talked to her more, learning about her, that she had a job interview coming, I wanted to help her prepare for that however I could. And so we went shopping. It was fun too, because I was like, dang, God really hooked me up. He's letting me do fun stuff.
He's like, this is great.
She needs fun stuff today. And it was such a blessing to be able to do that with her. Like, I think both of us benefited. And so yeah, shopping was fun. We got her clothes for interview and then got her hair done. And
oh my gosh.
Yes,
I love that.
Everybody wants to get a hair wash and trim, you know, so like it was perfect. And as I said, like when I told this story in that talk I gave, I even though I was still a little bit worried throughout the day, like I was sitting there trying to get work done on my phone when she was getting her haircut, because it was due that day, because of course my procrastination.
Yes,
so
yes.
it's also like if we can master like our weaknesses too, we have like we can make more space and time
expand that.
To do better. But luckily, I do feel like God kind of what's the word? Expanded my
I know exactly what you're talking
abilities.
about.
Yes,
there's
it's
a
like
word.
the loaves of fishes and bread.
Yes,
like
totally.
He can make more out of less.
Yes.
Just the magic. And so that happened for me because I was able to get done all the things. I spent 4 hours that day with her, and I wouldn't trade it, you know, like
and
ever.
4 hours that you didn't have, right?
Yeah,
You could have easily been like, sorry, I have so much going on right now. Yeah.
And it's like, no, but none of it mattered. None of, like, looking back, I don't even know, right? I don't even remember what those tasks were I had to do.
To-do
and they got
list.
done. They got done. And so but while I was submitting some stuff that was due that day on my phone, I overheard her talking to the hairdresser, and the woman had asked her, so what are you doing today? And she said, oh, I'm just hanging out with my friend Mollie.
Stop.
And it like, I just started crying right there, you know, because like I said, I don't even know if she heard or knew I heard that, but like that was the moment when I was like, my day was for you. Like this, like, and it couldn't have been spent any better. And so like, it was just a blessing. And that's what happens when we, I think, are willing to constantly reassess where we're at and what God wants for us.
Totally.
It's so much better.
Oh, I love that. Like when I heard you tell that story, I was like, oh my gosh. Like the thing that also struck me as so interesting is like, she helped you as much as you helped her. You know, you helped her in a lot of like physical, tangible ways.
Yeah.
As well as healing her heart. But like, I love that you were able to just have the clarity that you needed, and that like
absolutely
that cycle that we were just talking about, like regrouping and being like, oh, what is really important to me? I'm going to realign that. And I also want to bring up that I think it started that morning when you prayed for that,
it's
you
true.
know, because it was like opening your heart to a different, just, I don't know, just like a different awareness of like what your day could be like. And so I think that might be like a challenge that would be super helpful for the listeners to be like, just like set that intention for the day, whatever it is. Like, you wanted that clarity to find that purpose for yourself, and like, what a huge gift. And I love that you shared that story when I heard you speak, because I was like, I think that is so influential. Like that's real influence. You know what I mean? To be like, okay, how could we all do a little version of that every single day, you know, and have that perspective. So I love
awesome.
that. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Welcome.
The last thing I want to focus in on here is actually something that happened today. I love that right before this, you know, we got all set up for the podcast, that you're like, can we say a prayer? Like that, just this whole time, I'm like, oh my gosh, I love that. And I think it goes back to this example too, of like, just having God in your life and as your business partner and your best friend and the focus. Like for me, I think the times that I get distracted or off course, or that I have to rebalance, it's like, oh, I'm not putting God as the focal point. And so I just wanted to say thank you for that, because I think that's something that's so relatable to so many listeners out there, or people that I hope this has an influence, that if you are kind of lost or distracted or whatever, that you can regroup. And I heard this quote the other day that was like, if you feel like God isn't with your life, or isn't with you, or isn't in your life how you want him to be, just remember that people don't shout when they're right next to you. And that's influenced me a lot recently. But I'm just so grateful that to spend the morning with you and to hear your perspective and your journey and your story. Is there anything you want to leave with with us today.
I was having this thought while you were speaking, actually. So, and thank you, because like, you're amazing. I'm really happy to know you and that we could have this talk. I was having this thought, like, I ask people this question a lot. If you could only have one thing, if you could have in a relationship, just one thing, it could be anything. It could be looks, it could be connection, it could be honesty. What is the thing that you pick? And I think most of the time we have it, because we're naturally drawn to it. It's like me and my husband, like I really feel like we're having to do all this work right now because I didn't keep my marriage like my top priority, because I was so focused on business. And so I've been thinking about this, and I think that there's a real attack on marriages, and thinking that there's something better and you don't have what you need. But if you can just kind of dial into what that thing is, and sometimes I think it takes like a lot of thought and maybe even time to really focus on it. If you can realize that you have it, like for me, it was honesty. And like, I've seen that in my husband. Like, even though we have all these things that we're working on, and we have stuff that is a struggle and it's so hard to work together, I'm like, at the end of the day, like, I always know that he's honest with me, and like, it means the world to me. And so I think too, just like, that's like I don't know, I've just been thinking about that a lot lately, about how if we can just focus in on, because it's like prioritizing, like we talked about, but within your marriage and what you value most, and you likely have it, and celebrate that, because it's like you can get more good with focusing in on what's going right.
I love that.
And so that's like, that was just kind of on my heart. But anyway.
Well, and that's like being in a state of gratitude for the thing that you have, which raises your vibration for everything else. Because it's easy, the gap and the gain, right? To always be like, what's the gap? Like, oh, how could this be better or whatever? But really, when you look at the gain and you're like, oh my goodness, like I have the main thing that I wanted. So I've never heard that prompt before. I love that.
Because we get like,
so
you'd
huge.
Write a list, right, as a teenager, like I want all these things in a man, but it's like,
Yes.
what's the one thing that you value above all else? And like, hold on to that and like build on it.
Totally.
Anyways,
when
so,
you could do that with any of your relationships,
Totally.
relationship with your business, relationship with your kids, each one of your children, like with your best friends, with your, whatever that like really helps you. Yeah. I'm already thinking of that. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful that I have if I could choose one thing, I have all of that in each of my relationships.
Yeah.
So,
and you kind of, because it's almost like we have this false premise that like people can be without flaw.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Totally.
Or something that really we struggle with. But then it's like, everybody has their magic. And if you see it and you focus on that, it's just like so much better for everyone. So
Totally.
I've just been kind of like,
I love that.
Thinking about it a lot lately.
I love that. Well, I think there's always like something on all of our hearts that we're kind of like working through.
Yes.
So I'm so grateful that you
that
shared
was
that,
my
because I
thing.
think that can really help other people just like reevaluate some things. And I think that's kind of the theme of everything you talked about today. Just like reevaluate what it is that you actually want and go for it. You don't need all the extra plans, but go for it. But like be grateful and give back to, for everything that we've experienced. So I'm freaking love
covered
you.
a lot of ground.
Yeah, that was so good.
I'm like,
That
we
was
took
so good. So thank you,
Yes.
Mollie. I really appreciate it. So
Thank you, Andrea.
you're the best.
Jinx.